If instead of rebooting movies, retelling them from a different point of view became popular, which movie would you like retold? The game starring Michael Douglas. I want to see it from Consumer Recreation Services' point of view. I want to see how they manage all the actors and situations to make sure everything goes the way they want it. Edit. I want to thank everyone for agreeing this movie is great, underrated, and the upvotes. Thank you to you, Blogzilly, for the silver. People brought up Cabin in the Woods. My issue with Cabin in the Woods is those people didn't know beforehand what might or was going to happen. Michael Douglas's character knew about the organization and how Sean Penn's character talked about the experience. Also, it's in the woods. The game was done in San Francisco, so if this movie was done, you can show different POVs of San Francisco like the Golden Gate Bridge and different areas of San Fran these actors live in. The Truman Show. Truman grew up in front of the cameras in a fictional town. Michael Douglas's character does neither. More importantly, I want to see the cool-ass contingency plans they had in place, but he goes left instead of right, so they have to go with plan F instead of A, B, C, D, or E. I want to see the contingencies and the extras that don't get used. Like 10 minutes centered on Bob, who is dressed like a cop, but then ordered to switch because of some action of the player, so he changes into a clown, then asks to change again into a waiter's, then just a rich guy in a suit. All the while in the control room that looks like NASA's moon mission, chaos ensues and comm orders are addressed to Bob. The Matrix told from Agent Smith's POV. Dude is doing everything he can to prevent a bunch of smelly rebels trying to ruin his battery factory. The Matrix could have used cows for the entire thing. Just an endless green field of happy cows, forever. What does a cow want, after all? Instead, it opted to give humanity an existence. It even tried to create a perfect world for them, but some restriction of its AI or humanity's basic hubris meant that it just had to go back to a relatively peaceful point in history, the 1990s, and give them that instead. Despite the fact that humanity fought a genocidal war against it and lost, it still did this. Even when we kept on fighting and fighting, and even conjured up some sort of messiah figure, it just let us get on with it in our silly little world. The Matrix showed us vastly more compassion than we would have shown it if the war had gone the other way. Edit. Yo, I have about 100 replies now. Thank you all for taking the time to do so, and I'll try to get back to you with my half-baked thoughts ASAP. TBH, the Matrix isn't his battery factory, right? It belonged to the Sentinels and he's just a program they made to maintain its order. He's as much a prisoner as the people trapped within the Matrix. Honestly, the fact that Smith wants out even after Cypher shows such disdain for the real world and wants to back into the Martix, is what really make his desire to be free so damn interesting. Groundhog Day. A day in the life of Ned Ryerson. Bing. Edit to add. My first silver. Thank you. I'ma buy some insurance from Ned. Winking face. Except we don't see the repeat. We only see the Ned Ryerson from the timeline in which Phil hugs him and makes him uncomfortable, and the rest of the film is Ned trying to figure out his sexuality. Mean Girls told by the girl who doesn't even go there. This. Or Glen Coco. Either way, I'd watch. How about Cloverfield from the view of a professional camera crew? This question instantly made me think of Cloverfield, but not for that reason. I remember when it came out, people noticed that there's someone else with a camera in the bridge scene, and it became a popular idea that they could do a sequel from that group's perspective. This is what makes Cobra Kai so damn good. Johnny was the real Karate Kid. I also agree with Barney Stinson. Was gonna say this. When Johnny's relating his version of things, it all makes perfect sense. I would think Aliens, from Newt's perspective, would be pretty substantial. How a girl survived all that and the loss of her family alone on a foreign planet. Edit. And to clarify, as I wasn't expecting this to blow up lol, thank you all. It would be essentially the story of Newt living on Hadley's Hope, some background with her and her family, to the point her parents get face-hugged, how the aliens slaughtered the colony, how Newt survived in the air ducts, and what she lived through, while ending with Ripley finding her and bringing her back to the Marine Operations Base. It would be set as a claustrophobic horror movie. With a good script, this movie could easily do $300 mil emo. Their SA comic from Dark Horse that has done this. It's 2 issues long. Early 90s. Actually good. Aliens. Newt's Tale. Edit. Another Redditor pointed out a mistake in the title. Thanks for the upvotes, people. Princess. And the Frog. We got Maleficent out of Sleeping Beauty, so where the fuck is Dr. Facilier's backstory? He had a debt with literal demons and nobody seems to give a shit. This is such an underrated Disney movie, it gets so easily forgotten. I think I need Isma's story, too. Final Destination from Death's perspective. I imagine it would just be skeleton hands setting up deadly Rube Goldberg machine with some classical music in the back. Rube Goldberg machine considering they're death machines. I'll allow it. Robin Hood from the Sheriff of Nottingham's perspective. It'd be great to watch a movie about a medieval cop trying to catch a highwayman. Apparently, the Russell Crowe Robin Hood movie was supposed to be this. However, Ridley Scott rewrote the script. And he honestly believes he's taxing because the realm needs more protection and you can't without paying the soldiers. But this guy keeps stealing the tax revenue and robbing the largest tax bracket. Well, this isn't my idea or suggestion because Orson Scott Card already did it, but he wrote Ender's Game a second time from Bean's point of view and called the story Ender's Shadow. Ho Ender, ho Bean. Came looking for this comment. Ender's Shadow offers so much detail in a story you thought was already complete. Fantastic work by Orson Scott Card, along with the rest of the Ender's Saga novels. Not a movie, but I would definitely watch Breaking Bad, but from the perspective of Gus Fring. That dude has a crazy story to tell. I like that we get a little of that in Better Call Saul. Forrest Gump told from Lieutenant Dan's perspective. Could be really good, focusing on his training, then getting sent to Vietnam and being in charge of an idiot. Then the struggles of a soldier returning from war and the way the VA treated him. Just for him to reunite with the idiot soldier who saved his life. E.T. From his point of view. The fuck this kid poking me for? Tom Riddle. Becoming Lord Voldemort. I just think it would be interesting to watch his journey and his story. Although, maybe not all that interest, as it seems like he took a 30-year break to do whatever. There was a 17-year break in the Fellowship of the Ring storyline, where Gandalf goes to research the ring, which was glossed over entirely. Even without relatively unagging characters, there's no reason not to just have a scene which starts with a 30 years later. Caption. 500 Days of Summer would be really interesting to see Summer's perspective on everything. Avatar: The Last Airbender from the point of view of anyone but M. Night Shyamalan. I would love to see Azula's story. The series did a good job with her character, but expanding on it would be great. That or give us a story of Iroh's life. Let us see him go from generic Fire Nation prince to the wise, tea-loving, pie show player who guided his nephew. There was no Avatar movie in Ba Sing Se. Sir David Attenborough's Jaws. Passengers, told like this. This was a quality watch. Good suggestion. Aladdin, from Jafar's perspective. A college theater group did a very R-rated version that is absolutely hilarious, which can be found on YouTube under Twisted. The story of a Grand Vizier. What I would really enjoy is a late 80s, early 90s hand-animated Aladdin where Jafar is the defender of the Sultan's realm against some nefarious interloper who is bent on stealing the princess's heart and worming his way into the royal family. And he has a genie. Fuck you, Jafar. I don't like musicals, and still this one was so good I keep bringing it up. Such a well-done piece. Funny, dark, and yet somewhat touching. That theater group is called StarKid, and they are awesome. Edit. Totally awesome. A Lion King prequel from Scar's perspective. Show what really happened before the Mufasa era and see how Mufasa cheated Scar out of the throne. Scar's real name is Taka, which literally means garbage. Fucked up childhood. You should check out The Lion Guard. It's a kid's cartoon that is canon, and tells the backstory of Scar, how he got his scar, and why he was so bad. Scar's story isn't the focus, but it is important, and I like how they made it all match to the Og Lion King trilogy. I want to see a superhero movie from the perspective of an insurance adjuster. It could be a comedy, but just like every day he wakes up and he's enjoying his morning coffee and a bowl of oatmeal, then he flips open the morning paper and sees Iron Man went full Michael Bay again or the Avengers were back in town. Long sigh, stands up, chair squeaks on floor, clicks, pen straps, iPad to hip, tightens camera strap. He's the real superhero. There was a show called Powerless that was pretty similar to that concept, about an agency that deal with the aftermath of the collateral damage from superhero-villain fights. It wasn't the best show, but I thought it was a cool idea. Unfortunately, it was cancelled after a season. I still think it's an interesting POV and I'd like to see someone else take a shot at it. There was an entire comic book series called Damage Control, hinted at in the Spider-Man movie with Michael Keaton, that covered something along these lines. The guys from DC were the people who put the cities back together after a superhero fracas. After the explosions and the villains are vanquished, these guys show up and rebuild it like new. Or like old. It was written like a sitcom, just in comic book form. Somebody call Disney, I think I got a new show for them. Air Bud, but told from the POV of the kid who was pulled out of a basketball game to be replaced by a dog. There's nowhere in the rule book it says you can pull me out so a dog can play, either. It only caused him to train harder and harder. Bury himself into sports to prove others wrong. He ended up finding football and the rest is history, until the ghosts of his past came back to haunt him. The true Michael Vick story. An alien invasion movie told strictly from the aliens' perspective, complete with their confusion about why the humans are responding the way they are. It would make sense to us but would take the narrative form of a mystery for them. It could be a clever way to illustrate cultural misunderstanding. An example could be, let's show them we are friendly by revealing all our weapons, to demonstrate we aren't hiding anything, which the humans would take as a threat. I always liked that about the Borg on Star Trek. They genuinely thought they were helping the people they were conquering. A villain is scarier when it thinks it's doing the right thing. That's how the Minbari War starts on Babylon 5. The Minbari, a race of aliens, approach the human fleet with all of their weapons raised and engaged so the humans preemptively fire on them. Turns out to the Minbari raising all your weapons is a show of respect. Like, we think you are a worthy enough opponent that we should come prepared. To not raise your weapons would be a huge sign of disrespect. The horror-comedy version of this is Tucker and Dale vs. Evil. If you haven't seen it, it's exactly what you're describing, but two hillbillies instead of aliens and campers instead of Earth's Air Force. Forrest Gump from Jenny's perspective. That would be a dark and fucked up movie. Who would play her father? Horror movies from the monster, ghost POV. Basically, Beetlejuice. Shawshank Redemption told from the warden's point of view. IDK that may be too dark of a story. I'd like to think that the last thing that went through his head, other than that bullet, was how the hell Andy Dufresne ever got the best of him. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory from Willy Wonka's point of view. I want to hear his wicked thoughts. Wasn't the Johnny Depp one basically his point of view? Or from the Oompa Loompas POV. They probably have some serious shit going on behind the scenes. I want a movie and a book called Neville Longbottom and the Sword of Gryffindor about life in the school while the Big Three were wandering around the woods. This isn't exactly what you described, but there's a fantastic play called Puffs that covers all 7 years of Harry's time at Hogwarts, from the perspective of the Hufflepuff students. I was thinking Draco Malfoy, myself. I think he's a more interesting and deeper character than seeing him through Harry's eyes gives him credit for, especially in the last 2 books. I want to see a Batman movie from a goon's point of view. Like, he wakes up and eats some cereal before meeting up with the crew. And just by chance he hung out with Joe the Goon that day instead of Bob. Now he is just gooning around at night when all of a sudden he gets his ass gets kicked in by fucking Batman. He can't believe his bad luck. And just like that, he was gone. Coolest fucked up thing to ever happen to him. Here is that exact thing. I can't remember what it is, but there was some comic with an issue from a random goon's perspective. They make him sympathetic but then he gets killed at the end. Somebody may know what I'm referring to. Edit. It was The Invisibles. I knew someone would know what I was talking about. The others sound good too, though. The Princess Bride from Humperdinck's Paw. Or Inigo Montoya. From childhood to finding the six-fingered man to what he does after. Star Wars as a goofy stormtrooper buddy cop comedy. Deleted. Like The Mandalorian final opening. Nice try, Disney. Who knows, maybe some good ideas will get done rather than the usual garbage. The Sandlot from the perspective of James Earl Jones. How he grew up in the pre-Depression, pre-Civil Rights era, assuming he was born in 1890 to 1900s. How he fell in love with baseball, went blind, what his life was like. And more details on how the Beast came into his life and why rumors ran rampant about the pup. A Batman movie from Alfred's point of view. There goes Master Wayne in his furry suit off to beat up a clown for the millionth time for closure instead of going to therapy. A disabled and disfigured war hero, long past his prime, hunts down a cell of terrorists, capturing one of their leaders, but not before she's able to send a message call his former mentor out of retirement. In the process of retrieving the message, a family of locals is caught in the crossfire, which said former mentor uses to his advantage to radicalize the adopted son of the family. The boy manages to destroy a critical military base, giving the terrorists legitimacy, and builds up a name for himself over the years. As the boy's exploits become more and more legendary, our hero comes upon a shocking revelation: the boy is his own son, hidden away by his former mentor. He tries and fails to convince his son to join him, but the son rejects him, forcing him to choose between his honor and his family. Star Wars would be fucking wild. Totally tangential, but a fun fact nonetheless. Once the guy in the Vader suit found out none of his lines were going to be in the movie, he just stopped giving a fuck about his lines and just said whatever popped into his head, since he knew editing would take it out, and the actors had to keep responding to the original lines, so apparently there were some serious outtakes during conversations on set. Rambo: First Blood is about the struggle of an honest sheriff trying to stop a sociopath from creating chaos and death in his town. The book First Blood is based on First Blood by David Morrell, is actually half John Rambo's perspective, and half from the sheriff's perspective. Groundhog Day, from everybody else's perspective on the last day, repeat. Just a movie about a small town and some weather guy who shows up at random points in people's day to make their lives better, for no apparent reason. RoboCop. The Clarence Boddicker story edit. I'm 100% serious. A Breaking Bad type story about a regular man who got driven to violence and a life of crime in order to make it in old Detroit. It would make a good movie. Men in Black in point of view of K. Instantly changes everything. Raiders of the Lost Ark. The Germans explain why this ineffectual American tried to interfere with their efforts to unleash the power of God. Just explaining why the villain did what the villain did without the vague bullshit of to get power or to become all-powerful. Like Black Panther gave a legit motivation to Killmonger, that this resource-rich secret African nation exists even back in the day of the Atlantic slave trade and they never lifted a finger to defend their fellow Africans. Wakanda is pretty messed up. No one is a villain from their own perspective. Why does the villain think they are the good guys? Everyone thinks they're the hero of their own story. Some dude who carved another dude's eye out with a spoon. No one is a villain from their own perspective. Why does the villain think they are the good guys? Ever looked into the act of killing? The Shining, employing the perspective of Tony, the imaginary friend of Danny. Focusing on how Tony reckons the situation, start to finish, from inside Danny. Joker, but from the perspective of that kid whose parents were killed in the end of the movie. Scrubs, but from Cox's paw. I'd take the janitor, TBH. Semi-related. I didn't believe in this concept being worth a whole redo till I read Ender's Game and Ender's Shadow. It's cool going over the same base material but adding a whole second perspective and explanation for things that may not have made sense from the original. The life of Brian from the perspective of Jesus. Dark Knight, but just follow the Joker at all times. Star Wars only told from Vader's viewpoint. The Fifth Element from Ruby Rod's perspective. The Sandlot, from the cool kid's view. I need that version of Fifth Element right now. Harry Potter from Voldemort's perspective. Gimme that dark magic. I'd get down with Snape's perspective as well. Any rom-com told from the perspective of the hardworking businessman whose fiancée left him for the ruggedly handsome guy from her hometown.